I do. Thin, my fall jacket's out.
All right.
All right, are we live on?
Yeah.
So we're live on YouTube, guys, everyone? There we go. All right, thank you. So 8 o'clock, gonna call the meeting to order. Gonna try to expedite things as much as possible. I do need to leave promptly a bit before 10. After which, since Nancy's not able to attend, John will take over. So, but even with that, there'd still be a quorum.
John has that, John has that look like we're ending before 10.
John's got that, that,
Gonna help be expeditious.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with our roll call?
Rich Rita, Select Board ex officio.
Mike Capel member.
Wendy Rathgaber, member.
John Racine, ex officio conservation and member.
Alan Burko, alternate. Bill Spence, member.
Morgan?
Morgan Deem, alternate.
Awesome. All right, why don't we go ahead, seat Alan for Nancy? Why do I keep needing to be reminded about this? Tara, someone who's attending remotely can be seated.
Yes.
Although Rob is supposed to be joining us, so perhaps we should give him a few more minutes before officially seating Morgan. Will you let me know? Well, we review the minutes, and if Rob hasn't shown up, then go ahead. So let's review our minutes from August 11th. Anyone have any comments?
Nice and short.
That's in short.
Yeah,
You're gonna look at me, Wendy?
always looking at you.
Are you ready? Okay, line 54. I suggest adding a verb. It says, Rich updated the planning board stating that the upcoming road project will begin in October, starting with drainage work. And I would suggest after 2023 period. And work will continue as soon as weather permits.
Okay.
Here endeth the corrections.
Wow.
Okay, anyone else have anything?
It's the blue glasses that do it.
The powerful,
It's
the powerful lenses. Well, if there isn't anything else. Take a motion.
I move we accept the minutes as modified,
amended.
amended.
Okay, do a second.
I can't.
I'll
Yes,
second.
yeah,
You
you
were
did.
seated. You were
You were
seated.
seated. for
Whatever
me.
is here for me.
Oh,
Doesn't-
I'll
Whatever.
second the motion.
All those in favor,
Rich, I.
My God,
Wendy, I.
John, I.
You can still vote if
Just gonna
you.
still vote.
Alan Burko, aye.
Bill, I.
Okay, great.
Say nay.
So no Rob yet, so let's go ahead and seat Morgan for Rob. He hasn't emailed, right, for clarification on zooming, okay, fine. That's that. So, rules of procedure. Now, I didn't see any from what we were emailed.
Yeah.
I didn't see any. Oh, I guess. So what we were emailed, was that not what the town staff had commented on?
I thought that's what the
Can't-
town had commented is what we've got in the mail, email. I'm not sure.
What I saw in the email attachments were just what Tara had done. I
Right.
didn't see these. So Steve, is this an updated? It must be.
Looks like it.
It's hard to say who the commenter, who's commenting on these. TB3, WC 4R3,
Well, TB is town.
Yes.
Sarah, WC would be. Not sure.
I think Alicia might have made some of the changes, but not in track changes. And she indicated that in the in the comment fields. I only took a quick glance at it, but that's what it looked.
I think she said she made changes in the blue.
Yes, appears that way.
Alicia,
Yeah,
So she just did what Tara suggested.
yes.
There's only one that I saw where it says removed.
Well, it was that
Well,
was
that was
suggested
suggested.
by Tara.
Uh-huh.
There's a comment on towards the end of page 4,
Page
edited with public notice. But that's again, just what Tara had said. So, Steve, were there not any further comments from town staff about these?
Not to my knowledge. Alicia will be here in about 20 minutes.
Okay,
She can add
But-
some more.
It did look like several of the things I'd recommended haven't been done.
Haven't been changed.
I mean, I know you were trying to keep an eye on the budget as we get near the end of the year, but if it'd be helpful, I can connect with her and find out what she's done and kind of make a few other changes and then highlight some things that I think you guys should talk about because they're more policy issues. I'd be happy to take the lead on getting it done.
well, that would be helpful. Let's wait also and see what Alicia says when she gets here. So we'll put this to the side for a moment. Everyone, don't let me forget to revisit it.
And there's some things, like, again, I didn't even print it out because I wasn't asked to do any more
Yeah.
on it, but there's some things that I thought the staff needed to do rather than me, because I don't know how things work in the town office,
Exactly.
right? It's some of the language is left from when the town clerk was the planning and zoning staff as well.
Right.
And technically, the town clerk has nothing to do with the planning board, so I thought some of that language needed to be updated by staff, but I'm happy to drive that bus if it's helpful at some point.
Okay. All right. We'll revisit that once Alicia gets here. The HUP grant pre-application. So we have copies here, but.
Thank you.
And honestly, my head has been down with work and Labor Day. Steve, can you update where we're at with this, I know it was submitted and we did get an email looking for scheduling a time to meet with the person helping to guide this. Is there anything else happening with this that we should be aware of?
She had sent us a, what's called a doodle.
Right.
A scheduling tool,
Right,
and I went in and I plugged in my availability, and I only noticed there were 2 other people who had done the same, so I think we're just waiting for.
right, scheduling.
Schedule.
Yeah, so the 2 other are those of us that are gonna be working on it, and that's me and Kayla. Steve, of all the towns we reached out to with the doodle poll, you're the only person that's filled it out, so thank you. We're trying to schedule with all the towns that we're gonna be working with. And that's really the next step. I mean, the submission to North Country Council was not a formal part of the application process, but a way to reach out to get in line first with North Country Council for because Kayla's gonna help with the application and that I'll be helping with the work, so I'm gonna be part of those calls and participate. So that's really the next step, Wendy, when you have a chance to fill that out. We're trying to get those scheduled for next week, and then that's when we can really dig into where the grant can most help the town.
Okay, perfect.
And it's gonna be a roll-in application deadline, so. But we want to get in,
How much total money is available? Do we know?
I forgot the number, but it's not, I don't expect it to be competitive right now. I want to, there's 3 possible phases you can apply for, and I want to see my towns apply for all 3. And then if you decide not to use some, you turn it back, because I think it'll be more competitive later on.
Okay,
So
Thank
that's how we mark, and I did the form, so
okay.
Great. Okay,
why ask for half the pie?
exactly. All right,
I,
thank you for clarifying, Tara. All right, so flying ahead into some of our new business, looking at the revising the site plan regulations. I did a little bit of review for what we have in the subdivision stormwater regulations. And versus the site plan, it is quite sad.
yes,
So looking like at page 7 in our site plan regulations. Under, and just correct me if I'm wrong, looking at the wrong spot, Tara, but under drainage and utilities. We basically just have storm drainage shall be carried to existing water courses or connect with existing storm drains. Which is not the dissemination that we're looking to have happen, you know, like the perforated.
Yeah.
Conduits, whatever the right word is for water. That was the main spot, right, Tara, that we need to expand or correct and expand? Oh, you're muted.
I was still getting to the right page anyway. So yeah, I brought that up initially when I started working with you guys, that you guys don't actually have any standards and specifications in your site plan regulations. You've always kind of
Right.
used the site plan process to enforce various pieces of the zoning, but one of the key things that doesn't get at is stormwater, and making sure that the stormwater that leaves the site isn't leaving in any larger quantity or speed or worse quality than what's leaving it before the development. And
Right.
so we did that in updating the subdivision regulations, and I'd love to see you have the same language in the site plan regulations.
So
And-
looking, oh, sorry.
So the state, when you need an alteration of terrain permit, that's pretty much the standards now. But what this lets you do is apply it to smaller projects that don't necessarily need an alteration of terrain permit, and it gives you local enforcement. Like if you see, well, they built all the stormwater stuff that we asked for, but they're not cleaning it out, it gives you the ability to enforce that.
Okay, so for instance, what we have on page 24 of the subdivision with the stormwater management. Is it the type of thing where we can just cut and paste that into the site plan, and that would mostly, or? I mean, you know, the first thing, of course, refers to adhering to the state regs, which should be an obvious thing. But the list 1 through 16 under the stormwater management and subdivision seems pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, no, I think just glancing at it, because you're way ahead of me, I think number 15 might be the only place that's jumping out at me as needing tweaking to move it to copy and paste it into the site plan, but you might
Well,
need kind of a
why
new,
would you have- why
sorry,
would you have it in both places? I'm just
Well,
curious.
because in the subdivision regulations, it applies to subdivisions, and in the site plan regulations, it applies to commercial developments that don't require a subdivision.
Does that make sense?
So in other words, a subdivision, for example, where I am, all right, that would apply. If Sorrel builds more village stuff coming up that field, that wouldn't be a subdivision. It would have to apply there as well. That's what you're saying, I think.
Right, site plan regulations
That
apply
makes
to
sense.
every multifamily building or non-residential building.
Okay, no, now I understand. I just, you know.
And
Sure.
where you live happens to be both multifamily and a subdivision, so both sets of regulations applied to the expansions of that project, but we're gonna see instances where a commercial building can be built that didn't need a subdivision.
So,
So
oh, go ahead, Bill.
it would also apply to building modifications, would it not?
If they met the site plan criteria.
Yes, in other words, you're gonna modify your building, then you need a site plan review. So if you need a site plan review, then you should be able to be subjected to these drainage specifications.
Totally, and unless it qualifies as a minor, but what I was, just the last thing I was gonna say is, our section 6 in the site plan regulations is application requirements. It's not really standard, so I think you need a new section to cover the stormwater stuff, and then to amend section 6E 1, 2, and 3 to go with that. And I think I'd have to look at it, but I think the language that I put in your subregs is probably going to be fine to put in there too.
I'm actually just looking here. It looks like we've skipped section 7. We seem to go from section 6 to section 8, right? Section 6, submission items, section 8, performance maintenance. I don't see a section 7.
Do you have an old copy? Because 7 is minor site plan procedure.
Oh, maybe I'm looking at the wrong copy. Never mind. So then, in theory, we would just need to strike the, because we don't want to encourage storm drainage to be carried to existing water courses. That's like the opposite. So we would just need to strike that from the existing site plan.
Where else would they go?
Well, I think you need to replace the language in E, because that's application requirements. You need to replace it with the information that you'd need to verify that they're meeting the new stormwater requirements that you're gonna copy and paste from the subregs
Okay,
into a new section. And maybe that's a section, a new 8, and then other stuff gets renumbered.
okay. Well, the idea, Mike, is not to
Is that it
just like
goes-
build a concrete thing to funnel it to one spot that would then overflow, is to have
Make
something
disperse it.
perforated that
So it's
exactly, so the ground. Yeah.
Perforations underneath, so it goes down, not necessarily out.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it's really out of date thinking, though. Pipe it off quickly used to be the approach, and we've done an awful lot of harm with that.
okay. So the best way forward, I would think, Steve, since this is mostly like a cut and paste largely, with the exception of at number 15 on page 25. That's something we can handle in-house.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
quick-
I mean, Steve, I'd be happy to send you a quick email with how I would do it, and then take a quick look at a draft, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that works. Thank you, Tara.
Bill?
Yes, question for Tara. Do you recall whether the drainage regulations say anything about culvert size? That is, what I recall from Rick Vanderpool's study was that one of the things that he found was some of the downstream culverts are not as big as the upstream culverts.
Right,
In other words, we're just asking for a plug up and overflow, defeating the purpose of the culvert drainage.
Right, well, what we ask is that they're sized to handle a 50-year storm. We
Right.
don't, I mean, there is also a minimum size in there, but
Yes, I was referring.
it's more important that they can handle a 50-year storm, because a 15-inch culvert is fine in one spot, but not in another, depending on the size of the upstream watershed.
Yes. But what I'm asking is whether,
There is
Yeah.
a minimum diameter
There's a
of
minimum
15
diameter listed in
inches.
Right, which is fine at the end of a driveway, but not in a big project, so.
Right,
it's a separate point. And the point is that, I don't think anybody's ever done a survey to determine what the size of the culverts are. But if you found downstream culverts that were lower in size, less diameter, lower diameter than the upstream culverts.
well, there is something in 13, if a culvert diameter is proposed that is smaller than any upstream culvert, the applicant shall provide a statement from an engineer licensed in New Hampshire verifying that the proposed culvert size is adequate to handle the projected flows received from the larger upstream culvert.
Sounds good to me.
Right, because we had that knowledge that there was some locations like that in Waterville Valley when I wrote that language.
Good, because I
Okay.
think we can go to a couple that we know already
We've
exist.
seen them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if they already exist. And they were approved at that time. Aren't they like grandfather?
Yes.
Well, the grandfather until the 50-year storm. And
Well, no.
there's
But they could be- well, they
I
could-
I understand that they may not
perform.
perform, but if when they were put in, if they were.
But if they're
approved,
replaced, they have to abide by the new,
If they're
Right.
replaced,
and
but
that could happen. We've seen
Yeah.
that.
what?
Okay.
John, I keep going back to my concern.
Yeah.
Which is over on that. Stream or whatever you wanna call it, coming down, Golden Heights,
Yes,
between the huge, huge building and the building that's whatever, that lot that's coming, that stream, river, whatever it is that's coming down there. I don't think there's any culvert or anything else as that comes down. It just comes down. Is that right? Or am I hallucinating? again?
yes. And then when it gets to the bottom, the culverts don't function properly.
It's kind of a gnarly area down there at the bottom, yeah.
I was just asking because I do have a concern. With that, you know the area I'm talking about?
I do, but I'm not sure that we can address that with this. I think what we're trying to get done today is to help prevent that from happening in the future. Like when something is not functioning correctly, doesn't that end up more of a select board issue if there's a repeated issue with a location? Or is it DPW?
Or is it when?
It seems like we're working today to
Yeah.
prevent that from happening. But I'm not
Right,
sure what we
yeah,
can do today.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to your question
Okay,
off the top of my head, but I think obviously we would solicit the advice of DPW as to what, if anything, can be done to fix this and what is the
Right.
town's
right.
responsibility.
Because things are, I've been thinking since the comment was made that when they replace it, it has to meet the new regs. I'm not totally sure that that's right,
Oh, really?
but at the same time, if something is making it, say, flow into the road and it ices up and it's unsafe, then it's not grandfathered, because if something affects health and safety, it's not grandfathered. So
That's the
So
point I'm trying.
So I think the answer is not clear in there, and it's got to be really a case by case.
So
And there's nothing. Go ahead,
should the
John.
Conservation Commission be involved in that also?
Not in a formal way, but I know that
Well, somebody's gotta bring it forward to address it to be repaired or give it some attention. So would that go from the planning board to the select board to the town department, or how would that work?
again, I'm sure it's a case by case.
Because
Yeah.
right now that
So
area we're talking about, well, we should move on and table this and maybe
We
make
gotta
it for,
put-
well, I
We
think,
agree, we have to figure it out.
yeah.
yeah,
That's fine.
Yes.
I mean, I think if there's a culvert, an area that's habitually an issue,
Yeah.
then that needs to be brought to, I guess, the select board's attention as a first thing, but and maybe
Mhm.
jointly DPW, since
Yeah, I think we'd have
DPW would be
DPW
there.
investigate us and investigate it and tell us to what extent it is an issue or
Right.
could be an issue.
Okay,
In a 15
And then in a
years,
case
yeah.
by case basis.
Yeah. what I
as
wanted to know
Tara is
is
saying.
whether if there is a big rainstorm and there is a flood, is there a regulation that provides the town with the power to tell the landowner it's not adequate, fix it?
Not unless it's creating a health and safety problem or affecting the town road. Not that I know of.
Okay.
There's a ton of undersized culverts out there that are overtopped now because the 100-year flood is nonsense. We're having a few every year, so
Yeah.
not
agree.
not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, look at our.
The 100-year flood regulator, or the numbers, the statistics that apply to this, are they gonna be rewritten?
So perhaps we need to ask the Conservation Commission to keep an eye on the culverts and,
Yeah,
you know, undersized ones should be brought to the attention of,
we'll put that on the
Okay.
agenda and discuss it and then get back to the planning board and then address it to the select board, perhaps.
That they think that it's just inevitable,
yeah,
that it's gonna happen,
yeah,
and we should do something about it before it does happen.
inevitably.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Didn't the NRI identify several? I think that's your starting point for that work.
Yes, Rick has been out there, Rick Vanderpool is made
Right.
note of.
Right, so he identified several that he would prioritize.
Yes, that's what.
And there's funding out there to do that kind of thing now, so the time is
What-
right.
It's a different question,
Okay.
status of cleaning up.
Well, let's try to stay a little.
Yeah,
no, no, Here.
different issue.
So Alicia, just to catch you up to speed, we're talking
Hi.
about drop off go okay this morning?
Better.
Woohoo. We're talking about, for the most part, cutting and pasting what we have in the subdivision, stormwater section, page 24 and 25, into the site plan regulations, page 7. Steve was here for most of that discussion, so I think if you touch base with him, yeah, it's pretty clear. There's only one that wouldn't really be movable or applicable to site plan, so. just
Make some edits.
Yeah,
Move
if
it there
needed,
and there.
yeah, and Tara offered to touch base just in case there were issues.
Okay.
Want to back up a little bit too, because for the planning board rules and procedure, had you gone through and made corrections or just implemented Tara's suggestions?
I just, everywhere that there's like, I put it with WC2R1, which is apparently what my computer's name is. Anywhere like underneath, that's what I edited. So anything that doesn't, like, this first page, remove that, I did that. And change this, I did that.
Okay,
So anywhere there's like my little blue comment, I did what she asked, but things that were like. Things that need to be corrected, updated throughout, I didn't want to make the decision on that, so. Like, if we're gonna change the clerk, what are we gonna change it to? I didn't want to,
All we did was editorial changes.
yeah.
We did not make any
Okay.
policy.
Right.
No, no,
changes that
yeah.
you were-
yeah, well, I
Sure.
thought part of what we had asked from last month was just to make sure that on the town side of it, there were any glaring issues that you struggle with because of us and want to have fixed.
Well, that's really, I left it up to Tara to ask those questions about what you want to change. I'm more worried, I don't think there's anything in your procedures other than having, that we really worry. So, I mean, we can support whatever you guys want to do. There's nothing that's onerous. I want to make sure that it meets all of the new legal
Sure.
requirements. That's all we really care about. You
Okay.
guys-
Tara, I have a question on section 5, paragraph 2.
I'm not looking at your rules of procedure.
Let me read it then, and you can tell me what, where it says, the vice chair and secretary will review each application for completion before the date of the meeting. Can we say that it is, members designated by chair.
Well,
For example, if that
think
person's
that's the
not
type
here.
of thing.
Well,
that we-
I had, that's one of the things I had a comment on. I don't, it doesn't, I put a ton of comments in there that I don't think have been addressed.
No, we did
Yeah.
not address, there are a lot of your comments we did not.
Right, and I was just letting Mike know that's one, and if we approach it like that, we're gonna be here forever, because I don't even have it.
Never mind.
Can I suggest, I know we're all done with subgroups after the master plan, but it seems to me that having a 2-3 minds kind of look at this in more detail and then bring your
Okay.
thoughts to the bigger group might be a more efficient way,
Okay,
if there's the interest in doing that
no, that's fine.
amongst anyone.
No, I
here.
would help that.
So
Okay.
we have Mike volunteering to look at that. Do we have anyone else volunteering to look at our procedures with Mike?
That's fine. I'll do it.
I'll do it. I can
Okay.
pitch in too.
And you can, I mean,
Is that which I am looking at in my right hand, the same thing you sent out?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just all the blue are the basic things that Tara said, remove this, update this.
Okay, no,
remove
that's fine.
this. I didn't want to change anything that was.
Well,
No, no, no.
I
a
think,
decision you guys have to make.
I think what Tara sent us originally might be
Slightly different.
easier
That's fine.
to read.
I mean, all of
And maybe
Tara's is
in
in red.
conjunction with, yeah.
I just
Yeah,
wanted what I
uh,
did.
all my comments are, if it was just a no-brainer, I went ahead and did it in track changes, so you could see what I did. But most of my comments are in the comments field because I was only asked to take a quick look at it, not to do it.
Right.
So you have all my thoughts in the comments field, which you can look at it online, or you can tell it to print the comments.
They are in there.
There.
Get the blue.
She
The blue.
doesn't.
No. I'm saying in what we have electronically.
But she's saying that they didn't have comments.
Oh,
We didn't
fine.
have comments as a town staff.
Right.
All we did was implement editorial
Okay.
changes.
Okay,
Put a period here, change this word to this. That's all we did. The policy stuff we left up to you guys, the decision stuff.
okay.
Who's
So-
gonna do this?
I know
Sit
we-
down.
But can I ask Mark a question?
Yeah.
So one of the things that why I suggested that staff would be a next step on it is that I think it was written for a previous town clerk who was the planning board clerk as well. And so there's a lot of language in there that says the clerk will do this or that, and technically a town clerk has no role relative to the planning board. So I thought you guys need to update that to who in the town office actually receives the applications and the fees and that kind of, and who, the minutes, and because technically somebody's doing those for the board secretary.
Yeah.
And
We will, either I or Steve will participate with Wendy and Mike, and we'll make sure that those questions are addressed.
Great.
yeah, because those are just functional, and I'm the one who does the completeness review on the application. So I'm with Mike on saying a designee, but then there are a couple policy things that probably need to come back to the board, like what do you want to say about remote participation in meetings, for example, is not in there yet. So
Okay.
yeah,
have-
I think if Mark or Steve participate on your working group, that will get you there.
Okay.
Tara and or Mark. Can you refresh or bring up to date my brain on remote participation? I mean, once we have a meeting, right, once we have our quorum, the people that are now remote can now actually participate and vote?
Yeah.
Is that
Yes,
not true?
but yes, but
And
how the
what?
law reads is that's up to you as a board or the chair. So you ought to say it in your rules of procedure. You
Okay.
can let people who can't make the meeting because they're in the hospital or they're sick or whatever, participate remotely. You don't have to. So that's really something new to add to the rules of procedure.
So we have to state that affirmatively
Yeah.
in our
Yeah,
rules.
There are rules of procedure, so.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's the
fine.
right place, yeah.
Yep.
I just,
And
Just think-
and you'll see that in my comments.
Yes,
okay, that's important,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Okay, so this will move ahead with that. The political and temporary signs. Now, am I correct that we could just incorporate what the state is?
I think, well, just a little, very quick background. Last
Yeah.
month or so, the select board and town staff, the town manager and the code enforcement officer have been struggling with questions that have arisen regarding some political signs
Right,
that have popped up in town as we're getting close to elections this fall. And it appears, when we looked at the zoning ordinance, I think it's section K on signs, and we treat these as temporary signs, it appeared that we treated political signs on some property types differently than other property types, which by our understanding is not legal. We can't treat political signs differently
right.
than any other type of sign. For example, in single family and two family homes, no temporary signs are allowed. So if we treat political signs as temporary signs, no political signs are allowed. But on condominiums or in homeowners associations, you're allowed 2 signs per point of access from a town road. So you could have a situation, indeed, we do have a situation, I think, off of Osceola Road, where a single family home has a political sign. And if we go strictly by our zoning ordinance, it would not be allowed. But if we were to tell that person, take the sign up, condominium association just across the street could have a political sign. So this is a bit of a dilemma. And there are other issues with how we treat and trying to treat political signs the same as other signs. Well, if we do that, then we would request people who want to put up or place political signs on their property to come to the town for a permit to do so. And so do we want to get into the business of permitting political signs? So it seemed to us that the way out of this dilemma and how we've been treating it since town council several years ago had given an opinion, it was asked, how do we deal with something like this, is to simply exclude political signs from our sign section of the sign regulations within the zoning ordinance. Now that's a little bit of a shuffle, because we're not supposed to read what's on a sign. So how do we know what a political sign is from other signs? But I mean, that's the point. We don't want to get into that directly. However, the state RSA, I think it's section that deals with the 664 and 17 in particular, but the overall 664 does define political advertising is what we're really talking about here. It's considered political, vote for this person, or vote or reject this measure, something like that. It does define it. So our thought was from the select board and town management position that if we simply exempt political signs from our zoning ordinance, and then also state language to the effect that the town will follow, generally speaking, will follow RSA 664, specifically, I don't know, it's called subsection 17, which deals with the placement of political signs on private property, on public property, at least as the state looks at it. And that way, I think we avoid the whole issue of getting into either permitting signs or treating political signs differently. It's a bit of as I said, it's a bit of a shuffle, because we're not supposed to read what's on the sign,
Right.
but the state does define it. And if we go with that 664, we have that definition.
What does it say?
Does 664 talk about size of sign?
No.
It does not. So somebody could put in a great big humongous sign on their property?
But 6, but that RSA that you're saying, Rich, is about
Yeah.
signs in rights of way, not on private lots.
Well, it does
Well-
say, it does talk about the signage
Yeah.
on private property with the permission of the owner. The
Yeah,
property.
well, I mean, I think we usually read that as, because a lot of the roads are passing their rights of way over somebody's property, that you can't put a sign in front of my house without my permission.
It is a-
I-
Yeah, no, it's just a dilemma, I think, Tara. There's no clean solution to this. I think.
That,
you'd-
that's correct, and that's why we planners tend to just lean toward not enforcing the sign ordinance when it comes to political signs, because it's such a, you know, touchy issue, but if you exempt political signs, in my opinion, that's not gonna be consistent with the Supreme Court decision that said you can't treat the content different. Another solution would be, well, and I've seen a couple of towns taking this kind of workaround, that to allow temporary signs. You know, the only place you don't allow any is single and two-family homes.
Right.
You could allow temporary signs at single and two-family homes within a certain time period.
Right,
Without saying a political sign, you could say X amount of weeks before and after an election.
any sign, it doesn't have to be political.
Right, so it might be a for sale or open house or
Yeah.
whatever, but
Yeah.
that would be.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I've come up with in my head to meet meet the intent and comply with the Supreme Court decision.
Well, I
It's
think as you and I have talked about, Tara, there are towns that have exempted political signs from their ordinance. And they haven't been challenged on it yet.
Yeah.
And well, you know, if somebody challenges it, then we'll deal with it. But it is at this point in time in our country, I really don't want to go down the road where we are worrying about political signs. We have a statute that other towns use that they refer to in their zoning ordinance. And I think we should investigate those towns that do that and see how they do it. And then make a decision whether or not that's the way we want to do it. The only problem that I have with excluding timing is that can lead to confusion.
Hmm.
Like what day can I put it out? What day do I have to take it down? You know, what year can I do it? Because it won't be every year, because we don't have elections every year.
Or does it include local elections
You know, does it include?
we-
local?
we do
We'll
have
have
it.
to tell, we'll have to,
in March?
yeah. So I just think
Put it in the
that
snow.
we should look at some different ways of doing it in the ordinances, take what Tara's recommended as a possible option that you look at, and then see what the wording would look like.
Yeah,
But it's really difficult in our current ordinance to decide what to do. I
sure.
mean, the select board has made a temporary decision for this year. But I really want to get this squared away before 2024, because it's gonna be 10
I mean,
times worse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So is
So-
that something you'd want to do? Look at what other towns are
Yeah, I
having in
would
place?
say
And
let's
could
bring
you,
the language in from a few different ordinances and then you guys pick one, we can pass it by town council, get their opinion. But I think we should move to do an amendment of some kind.
is that something that town staff would have time to research?
Yeah, we
And
can-
perhaps
we'll- yeah,
put out
I'll work-
suggestions through
Tara
email?
Hardy had pointed out a few towns to me
Okay.
that handle it.
Maybe you could
in
just
different ways.
email them to the group
Going
ahead of the
online
next
and
meeting.
getting the zoning ordinance and looking it up.
I think the key thing that you're gonna wanna pay attention to is how you define political advertising.
Yeah.
That's why I say I'm very happy landing on the state's definition.
Is there one? It's not
There
in,
is.
it's not in 66417.
No, not in 17, it's another subsection.
It's
I
another
don't have it in
subsection
front of me.
Okay,
6641.
But at the very top,
I
towards the
think
top.
it's, 1 or 2. The definitions are there.
okay,
So, you know, and that's another thing is, there's a certain comfort level, at least for me, and I know for Dave Noyes as well, to fall back on state statute.
Hmm.
You know, because that's already an established decision by the legislature. And as a political subdivision of the state, that's, I think, something we can hang our hat on. Hey, look, we're just doing it the way the state defines it, the way that the state says to handle it.
So I think we would have time then, if you guys are able to do the research, bring it before us.
Yeah.
Email, we can discuss it next meeting and have a public hearing in November. That would give us time.
Great
We
time.
can- If we can come to an agreement next meeting on wording.
Yeah. Well, I can work as a member of this board and the select board, I can work with
Thank
town
you, Rich.
staff and to
Rich,
come up with the
could
language.
you
on
do
that.
us a favor, or Mark, could you do us a favor? And email us that political definition?
Well, we can just look. it
Well,
up.
just,
I mean, I can look it up too.
Well, for the
We're gonna
meeting
come up
664.
with- We're gonna come up with, we'll come up with several options of language. Not. Yeah, do your own research if you wanna look into it,
Okay.
but we'll come
Yeah.
up with actual.
Yeah.
Options A, B, and C, or A, and B, whatever.
Okay.
if you search on RSA 664, it'll pop up
up.
elections, chapter
Yeah.
664. And it has definitions,
RSA 664.
664, and there's sections or subsections 1 through at least 17. More than that, 20 something.
Yeah.
I think that go through all of it.
Lots of fun reading in the RSA's. So.
Yes, we'll still be in a dilemma, because we go one way, we'll be violating something. If we go another way, we'll be violating. We just have to pick which way is the preferred way, and then move in that direction
Yeah.
in the end. Yeah.
You know, and you have the nuclear option, no temporary signs. in town.
Well,
You know, I mean.
we've not considered
Well,
that
no, but I mean, there are
that-
nuclear
yeah.
options, no regulation of
with
them.
regard to temporary sign,
No temporary
Right.
signs. I
right,
mean, those are going to be
right,
something you can look at, or you may dismiss them out of hand, but
right.
that's,
Yeah,
think about it.
yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for doing the work on that. That would be helpful.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
what was the Supreme Court decision? I'm not aware of this.
oh, that we can't regulate the content of a sign.
The
Like
content.
you can't read the
That's
words
what I
on a
thought.
sign.
Right.
So,
How do I understand? Okay.
yeah,
thanks.
And that's our dilemma. So
Yeah.
how do we know if it's a political sign if you can't read it? So how can we know if we're treating it differently or not?
No, okay, thank you.
So we end up the nuclear option, don't
Right,
deal with it.
no
whatever.
signs at all.
Or don't regulate.
Don't regulate signs,
Yes,
temporary
And then-
signs.
we would have signs like
One
fall
of-
foliage.
Either one of those.
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
So that's it, I'm reading it and. As you said, 664.1. Application to provision shall apply to all state primary, general, and special elections. But shall only apply to presidential preference primaries as provided in this chapter. That would mean that it doesn't apply to the actual November presidential election. Which makes no sense.
that,
We'll
which is
go
why we have a working group. who
Oh
are
my
gonna
God,
be addressing it
never
and
mind.
Give us language.
Never mind.
Okay.
You resign your position?
Continuing on.
Yes.
The Snows Mountain Special Zoning Area. The way that we have it described currently. A special zoning area is hereby created on the portion of the parcel of recreation zone land at Snows Mountain, consisting of the flat lots at the base of Snows Mountain, bordered by Cascade Ridge subdivision, Boulder Path Road, tennis courts, and Snows Mountain Ski Hill. The ski hill itself is not part of this zone. So Tara, in clarifying that, would you recommend using lot numbers, or what's the best way to?
is it,
make-
is it an entire lot? I thought it was part of a lot.
It's a part of a lot.
Yeah, so I'd talk about how many feet from the edge of the road right away, maybe.
Part of a lot, what is the remainder of the lot?
The ski hill.
The parking lot, the ski hill,
The entire
Yeah.
ski hill?
the whole area in between Snows Mountain Development and Cascade Ridge, that
That
Yeah.
whole swath. of
all the
land.
way up. Well, it stops at the water reservoirs. That's the national forest boundary. There's a
That's the-
boundary up there by the trees.
That's the whole lot.
Yeah,
So it's,
but it-
it's
but it
basically
doesn't
this,
include-
right?
Yes, correct. That's
That's-
all part of that same lot.
That lot.
So that's pretty much all the way up to the top of the chairlift and a little higher,
No,
No.
where the
no,
reservoirs are.
About
Oh, where the
midway up
reservoir-
the chest.
where the walk,
midway
where
up
that
the
road.
chest.
has-
But it does say that it doesn't, the ski hill
does not
itself is
include
not
the ski.
included. Yeah, that part, that's stated already on page 16 of the
But-
zoning.
But suppose I wanted to change the use of it and it's not even a ski hill anymore. Where can I build my whatevers?
Right, we should have a number of feet from the center line of Boulder Path Road or something like that. We
Right.
should have an identifiable.
Should we? Between, who would be best? I feel like we need to bring in like Tori or someone representing that organization as well as what DPW or select board? How do we?
Might be able to do it on, come up with a good idea on something like Google Earth to run by them too.
Okay.
We can use either the GIS system or we can use Google Earth.
Okay,
And Dave has all of those maps. As a code enforcement officer, he has all of those maps available to him, public safety. So we can come up with a number of feet.
okay.
Would it be useful
And-
to the town to hire a surveyor?
No.
No,
No.
we're not creating a new lot. I don't think, maybe Tara has a different opinion, but I don't think there should be anything on our tax maps necessarily that show this. We did not create a new lot,
Right.
a new property. We just identified a section of an existing lot.
So would you guys be able to, or Dave be able to look at those,
So wording.
the Google Earth and the GIS
Yeah.
system, review it with Tori
We'll have, yeah,
and make sure that they're on the same page of what makes sense with their plans and,
we'll make sure that
Okay,
they
number of
agree
feet.
that whatever number of feet you come up with is part of the definition. It's a little fuzzy, like where is the line at the tennis courts and that kind of stuff.
Very
Yeah.
fuzzy.
So we'll come up, with a way to do it.
Does the
Okay.
definition of the special zone define what could be built on this land?
Yes,
Yes,
Purpose.
that's the whole
Yeah.
purpose. of it.
Yeah, okay. Because of the, the concern, at least for this board, ought to be, what would happen if BBTS were to sell that property?
Right.
Then what would the new owner do with it and what latitude would the new owner have
well,
for
it's still,
building
it's
this
still
or
rec.
that?
Yeah,
I
it's
think that was
still going
Tara's.
rec, but yeah.
right, and that's the instance where I think you want to make sure that everybody's clear where the line is.
Okay. Okay.
We'll try to pick something that's semi-permanent.
Sounds very administrative.
Okay.
Well, nothing is permanent.
Yeah.
You can get a
Yeah.
big enough tractor, a big enough excavator, you can change virtually anything.
We're seeing that happen.
Yes, it is happening. All
All right.
Dynamite.
Okay.
Trying to avoid the dynamite.
So, all right. So, thank you.
If we
So
were to put
Dave
in monuments on the corners of the lot,
There are existing monuments and maybe we can get measurements off of those. So we'll try to come up with a way to make it measurable.
Right.
That we can memorialize.
It was never
It was never surveyed.
surveyed or recorded when they created the district. They didn't say from this point to this point.
No, that's the problem.
That's the
Right,
problem.
that's, okay.
I have a Google Earth question.
for example, I have Google Earth brought up right now and it shows our building, but doesn't show any of the other construction. So Google Earth is a picture at a point in time, which is not necessarily
Current.
current.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how
That
it
that
works.
was my understanding. as
Yep.
we- Okay, that's fine,
Okay,
never mind.
okay. So, great, so Dave will take the lead on that. Fantastic. For the master plan, we are on track for our meeting on September 20th, right? In our previous meeting area, adjacent to the post office. Can we have a show of hands of who's able to attend that evening?
It's the
Just
date.
want it-
The 20th at 6
20th,
p.m.
Tuesday, okay, so we
Yeah.
will, just want to make sure we have a quorum, because that would be a drag. Okay. Um,
6 p.m.
yep,
60.
So that.
So
pup
that
can
will
attend.
be on YouTube, right? So I can see what comments there were.
yes.
Yeah,
it'll
or I
be
can send you
recorded.
the recording, whatever's easier. Yeah.
And
And-
my copy is, I'm picking it up from my proofreader Saturday. And so if there are any, if there's anything that's not, or anything I think you need to bring up at the public hearing, I'll send that out in advance.
Perfect.
And we have had one comment, right, that we're gonna be bringing up already at the public hearing.
Yes. Yeah, Ray Kucharski had
Yes.
submitted some thoughts.
Yeah.
Which are very valuable.
Yep.
And for the record, it is available.
The master.
The
plan?
the draft
The master plan
Yes,
is
yes.
online.
is online.
Yes,
For all those listening.
Upstairs if
Right.
people wanna read it.
excellent. Okay, so that sounds good, on track. All right, so we have the correspondence that Rich, was it this one, the town cities prepare for zoning? law
Yeah.
change?
Yeah, change in boosting housing. I had very hard time wrapping my head around this and
Oops.
I saw there are things in there like the board has to be quasi judicial and temperament or words to that effect. That's not quite sure what it means, but I think Tara, I saw, I think an application that you did that incorporated the changes that are required by this, what is it, HB 1661?
Are you talking about my sample notice of decision?
Yes, I think it's for Bethlehem.
Yeah, so
So-
I mean, the only new thing in that is findings of fact, and so, you know, you've already had to document
Mhm.
how something doesn't comply with the regulations by saying the setback required is 15 feet and this is only 10. That's already been in there, but it wasn't really referred to as a finding of fact. So now we're asked that the notice of decision has to have a findings of fact. So we're all kind of, I think what we do in the coming year will determine what that means. So I took a shot at it with one I had to write recently. And that's what I sent out. There isn't too much in that bill that affects you guys. There's a few things though, and one to be aware of is that you can no longer apply to the select board for an extension to the 65 days. If you had a disagreeable applicant and they weren't agreeing to an extension, you had been able to go apply to the select board for one, but now if the applicant doesn't agree to an extension, it's automatically approved, even if it doesn't comply with the regulations. So those timelines are more of a fire under us now, but at the same time, the only reason we ever aren't ready at the 65 days is because we've needed more information. We've had a study going on. We've had an engineer review. We've had legal review. Now you can deny it without prejudice if you don't have that information, and they can reapply. So So that's the solution now. If you don't have what you need at the end of the 65 days, instead of applying to the select board, you
That's a
would,
state rule regulation.
yeah, we're talking about this year's changes to the RSA's.
So,
Uh,
Sarah, if I may ask a question, I guess my overarching query is, are there any changes we need to make to any of our documents, official documents or procedures like site plan review or subdivision or
procedures.
or just procedures that we don't, that to incorporate what is now best understood and as a result of 1661. I understand there's still some concern that there are areas of this bill that are not very specific.
Maybe, I haven't looked at, I mean, I work for 12 communities. I haven't looked at everybody's regulations with that in mind. That probably, I mean, a lot of times we put in the subregs or site plan regs that procedure for applying to the select board, for example, and now when I'm writing them, I just refer to the RSA, figuring it might change again, like I skip those details. And I have been writing that minor site plans don't need a notice of decision. It can just be the minutes. And now when I write that, I'm adding language that says provided the facts are contained in the minutes, something like that. So there probably are tweaks to the regulations. Probably nothing major.
But the
That was-
site plan review regs and the subdiv regs, you guys can change it anytime.
Right.
It would be just if there was anything in the zoning ordinance that needed to be changed, that we'd have to really.
Yeah,
worry.
there's nothing in the zoning ordinance that,
I don't think
Right.
there is,
So-
but, so adopting the template maybe, Tara, as part of the rules of procedure, just making that, an appendix to the rules of procedure, or however you want to do it. Whether that belongs in the subdiv regs and the site plan review regs. That we can make that decision, but that would be the kind of thing, right, Tara? To make sure we've covered everything.
you could strip out the content of the Bethlehem one and call it a template.
Right.
And put it in your rules of procedure. You don't need to have that in your regulations.
No, whatever, I think just keeps us on the,
I like including it for the future, because we
Yeah.
always run into the case of, well, how do we do this? And if it's not in the way.
Yeah, there's nothing, not thinking about it now that I said it. You don't have any incentives for senior housing in your zoning.
not yet, but that seemed to be the main thrust of this, right?
That's
That
one
we-
of the only things that pertains to zoning changes that I can think of right now. I don't.
We'd have to treat it the same, work.
You need to
well,
publish your fees. You need to make sure that you're publishing your fees. And you want to have language in there that refers to the RSA that lets you charge them for my time, because that's a fee that can't be determined in advance. So you want that stated on your published fee schedule, that there'll also be these case by case charges. The ZBA has a different timeline, so I'm not sure if those details are in the zoning ordinance. That would be something that would need to change in the zoning. I'm just not sure if those details are in your zoning ordinance.
So is this a project for next year? In terms of
It's not a problem.
reviewing, well, I'm thinking of Tara reviewing these various regulations we have, or even zoning, to make sure that we comply with HB 1661.
I mean, it almost seems like it should be an annual thing for us to have Tara to do, right? Review and make sure that any
Of course, yeah,
RSA updates are reflected in our zoning. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
just
or
take a quick
regulations.
look at the zoning right now. We don't.
and while you're doing that, Tara, I mean, I was particularly struck by the treatment of quote unquote religious entities.
Oh, yeah, that, I was looking at the other bill. You're right. That is a zoning change, but so we'd want to make sure that if we talk about the timing, I just don't know if in this, there's too much in here to glance at. In your zoning, in your Article 8 in the zoning, if it talks about the ZBA timelines, then that would need to be changed. But yeah, I wasn't thinking about that other bill, Rich. I was focused on the other, but yeah, what do you say about churches in your zoning?
I don't think we refer to them at all, but what we're not allowed according to, what is it, 1201, 1021? HB 1021. It talks about religious structures and we cannot no longer impose on religious properties regulations that include anything about lighting, signs, noise, on-site or off-site drainage, erosion and sediment control, layout of streets and sidewalks,
So
utility. design, et
yeah,
cetera.
but so the bigger deal, and this is what I was looking for, they're a special exception in HDR. And they're not allowed in LDR, and that's now unenforceable. Under 1021.
1021, so yeah.
It basically has to be churches that you need to split. Either just not enforce it for now, or you need to add another line in the table so that you separate churches from civic centers. And then have it be permitted in every district.
So
Mhm.
theoretically, a religious building structure is exempted from our noise regulations.
That's
Well-
how our 1021.
Not if it's,
Just that, I mean, what I heard what Rich said, I always pay
Well, I
attention.
think it's.
I always pay
yeah.
attention to him.
Well, I don't know, you should do that, but it is a legal question. I think towns are wrestling
Well,
with this.
no.
I think that's a significant question.
There's a clear answer to his question. This is specific to zoning and site plan. So if we're talking about the noise section of a zoning ordinance, that's correct. But if it's a standalone noise ordinance, this has nothing to do with that. This is specific to zoning and site plan. So, and then, but it says, may be subject to regulations concerning height, yard size, lot area, setbacks, open space, and building coverage. Those would be the only pieces of site plan review you could look at. So it's not a blanket exemption from site plan review. There are a few pieces you could look at. But you have to allow something religious use anywhere, and it's so poorly written. Some of us are pretty perturbed about it because within a few miles of me, there are 3 former church buildings.
Former,
And what happens with those? Once somebody's allowed to build it anywhere, and then the congregation is too small to go away, or it's some modern thing and it goes bankrupt, somebody's gonna be able to get a use variance in that building because it won't be suitable for a residential use. So that's my commentary. But yeah, I mean, technically, the zoning, you should have a separate line that makes it permitted everywhere.
Yeah, I think this just comes under staying abreast of.
Yeah.
recent
Or you could just take the word churches out of. I mean, that would be another thing, is just take it out of that line.
but we have zoning already and just not address it.
Address it when it comes before you.
So is this
Yeah,
gonna
until then.
pass?
Yeah.
It was already passed.
It's
It's
passed.
passed.
These are, that was my
That's
point,
the point.
that these two bills have been passed and we
Yeah.
need to,
Yeah,
what do we need to update to stay in
Yeah, I think,
compliance with state law?
yeah, I think to your point, perhaps this can just be part of Tara's contract for every year that she's willing to be helping us. To make sure that our zoning is current with new state regulations. I mean,
Yeah, I think,
will run, it means
the
it'll run
extent
a
she
little bit
can,
of a
given the-
lag.
Quickly running out of time to come up with one. So.
For
No,
this-
no,
for-
no, that's what, for next, as we're saying for next year, I mean, we'll run at a lag behind, and I guess if someone were to challenge us in the months ahead of when we.
Yeah,
implement something.
have the chapel question that will be on, I assume will be on the agenda
That's
We do
why I'm
intend.
asking, that's why I'm asking
for
the
a town
question.
meeting.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I, I think making whatever changes are very apparent in the zoning ordinance might be a good.
for this year, I mean, do it
This year.
this fall time.
Yeah.
Can I ask a legal question to? Because, and that's why I started asking the question, I'm not saying anything negative about the chapel or anything else, but. Somehow. The chapel, assuming it gets built, should not, in my view. Should not be exempted in any way from our noise regulations.
Well,
I don't think anybody should be.
Or any other regulations.
Again,
Right.
that's for the discussion about the language and the whole public hearing process that, yes, you should talk about that. We're not
But
gonna
it's- I mean, sorry to just be sounding negative, but
Sorry.
yeah.
My
But
fault.
here's the problem with the way the law was written. So would it apply to the chapel? It says you can't restrict the use of land or structures primarily used for religious purposes. Is that chapel gonna be used primarily for religious purposes?
That
We don't
definition.
know.
We don't.
You know, we.
Right, so how do you decide whether you apply the zoning to it or not?
Well, but if we take everything out of it, then we're not gonna. And we find out that it is gonna be used for primarily religious purposes.
But
You
how-
know,
how
how do
do-
we handle? it?
how do
I
we
just
even
think we
enforce
should
that?
make changes. If we can identify them clearly.
That's the best we can do.
It doesn't
Yeah.
sound like we can identify this clearly. I'd hate to rush into something and stoke the flames of. I don't know, any
Controversy.
misperceptions.
I would just sit on it for a year and see if that bill
But we
gets
can't-
amended.
but my issue is that
Well, no,
we
they,
can't sit on it for a year.
they're not,
Well, no,
they-
the zoning, Mike, I meant the zoning change, I think you can sit on for a year. I think we'll see this get amended.
Right.
Right, my,
For
my,
now, you're gonna have to get a clear feel for the chapel when it comes in of whether it's primarily gonna be used for religious purposes and go from there.
my concern is this, and I apologize in advance. Let's assume that the chapel committee is gonna come forth in March and request to purchase that land for whatever the number is,
that's not what they're gonna come forward with.
and the ability to build it on that
They're
land.
not gonna come forward. They're gonna come forward, as I understand it, with a request that the town allow them to re-engage with the select board on discussions about purchasing the property. So that'll be another whole year before that particular warrant
So in other words,
potentially comes.
what you're saying is that they're gonna say, okay, we want to be able to have a year to discuss with the select board again, our ability to purchase that
A
land.
conditional PNS agreement.
So
yes.
that PNS agreement would come before the twenty
At the earliest.
twenty-four,
At the earliest.
the 2024
Right.
town meeting, at which time should we want to attach any restrictions to said PNS, that would be the time to do it.
Well, if nothing else, at that point, we would have our zoning clarified and,
From from the planning board perspective,
Yes.
so.
and that,
Assuming we can do it.
which is what's in our purview for
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
Waiting a year. if that's
Okay,
what
I
we
just,
propose,
you know,
waiting a year.
I
Yeah.
just didn't
think-
want to be put in a position where we
I-
get
You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I think would be better served just making sure that we don't rush into this and, you
Yes,
know, have a public hearing right before that makes it sound like we're trying to preclude them from doing it.
No, that
which
wasn't
is
my
how it-
intention.
No, I know, but I feel like that's how it would be received.
Yeah.
It
Or
would work
help.
better. Or help, either way, exactly.
I
So
agree
if we
with the
just
comment
take our
that
time.
that the way this was written, this is bound to be amended, that this is gonna create tremendous amounts of controversy. I mean, there's so many other people who are not gonna be satisfied with this.
Okay.
So this
Yeah,
law,
and-
it's not
and
gonna
it-
stand the way it is.
Yeah, and it could even be amended to be worse. There's a planner who has a mission to amend it to take out those exceptions as if it would expand your opportunity when it
Always
would
the
limit it.
possibility.
I-
Always
I-
the possibility it could be worse.
Again, I just, didn't mean to hijack it for so long, but I think
Yeah.
this could be part of something for Tara to look at, these
Yep.
two bills and see what we might need to do.
Yep.
And if you do see something, Tara, I mean, that we must immediately do, then we could. If the timing worked, but it doesn't sound like there's anything immediate.
No, I think it's more to be mindful in the meantime that you need to be going with the RSAs where your regs conflict.
Right.
So where you still say churches are a special exception, if somebody wanted to put one in the, HDR, then Dave needs to know he doesn't send it to the zoning board for a special exception, for example.
Because we conflict right now, our zoning conflicts with.
Right, you can't require a special exception.
Is that something though, so is that something we can easily fix this? It's not prejudicing anything,
I think Wendy has a good point that taking the word out could make it look like the opposite. I would just sit on it for a year and let's see what happens.
I wanna hear Mark's comment.
Well, if it's allowed, then what's the problem with religion, whatever the wording.
breaking
is,
it out
Breaking it out and putting it as an
in the use
allowed
table,
use in the use table.
in all zones.
Yeah. If that's what the law says, then why wouldn't that be a simple fix? So we can use the definition that they have in the.
1021.
language. Yeah,
Because I think we'll see the law change in the coming year
What are you gonna do with I don't know what it's called. A place, a home for where the priests live. And he wants to
Correct.
live
Yeah.
on Cascade Ridge and call that's a religious house. You'll have no control over that.
but we have.
Is that
no-
true?
We have no control over it because the bill passed.
Right, no, I
Right.
agree.
So.
That is one of the problems.
I would rather not have an ordinance that we know we're not going to enforce. Again, we go, because what if it takes 2 years to get the bill amended, or 3 or whatever?
You're talking about a technical
I'm
fix.
just a technical fix for what is the law. I mean,
It doesn't,
So to do that, I would just take the word churches out of that line 3B and add a new line that says, use the wording from 1021 and make it permanent everywhere. That would be the fix if you wanted to do it.
to me, that is what the
Right.
state law says right now.
It's
And
just,
that is-
code enforcement.
yeah, and that's fine too, but why it makes me nervous is I don't think we really know how to define the use of land or structures primarily for religious purposes. If I have, pagans or witches or whatever, and I don't, but they did some service in my field every year, am I exempt now? I just think it's so muddy.
We're gonna have.
It is,
We're gonna have
the
to do it.
definitions are muddy, but
You're right, Mark, and I'm usually black and white in terms of the RSAs, but so that's how I do it, is just take churches out of 3B and add a new line. And don't say churches, but say land or structures primarily used for religious purposes. Use that exact language from 1021.
Okay.
So we
And then let the lawyers fight
And
what
then
that
let the
means.
lawyers fight about it,
What that
because
means.
you will have
Right.
discretion, you're going to make a decision, you will have a vote about whether or not it is primarily for religious purposes. And unfortunately, that's gonna become a legal issue, and somebody's gonna get sued somewhere in the state. And it'll go to the court, and the
court, yeah.
court will decide.
And then we'll have precedents.
To
And
be
then
a,
we'll
right,
have precedent. But
So,
at least we're.
Okay, are we in favor of doing this?
well, let's just clarify. So just to be clear, Tara, you're saying if we take out 3B, remove church, the word churches from that.
this is in the use table.
And the
Yeah.
use table. And then add a separate line that states what?
That says. Land or structures primarily used for religious purposes.
Then do we also take the definition of churches out of our definitions? Do we have churches anywhere else in here? I was trying to skim through.
I don't know, we'd have to do a search.
But I would say yes. I mean, we'd have to be just consistent with the language.
Right, but isn't churches primarily a word that describes?
Well,
a-
that's how we have it defined, yeah, religious.
But it's not just churches that are exempt.
Yeah,
It
Right.
changed, that law changed.
you
Okay,
could.
But
so-
I think,
have
would just-
Service in a house.
I
in a
think you needed,
residential area.
then just delete that definition.
So also delete definition 13 on page 3.
And don't try to restate the, religious purposes, just use the
Leave it
state's
alone.
language in the table.
Wait for the lawyers to fight it out. In some poor
I
town,
can-
some,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Does this RSA define what religious purposes are? Can we
No.
refer-
that's the problem.
problem.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have any.
There's nothing.
Right,
right,
I did read, and it upsets me, for example, that you could have a wicker fixed, I'm not picking on that.
Oh, that's the least of the things that would
Yeah,
worry
it
me.
just, and
No.
the
And I understand,
Like
the
Karen
municipal
says, you could-
association has raised this. There is some discussion about this, right? Tara, and within the municipal association.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nobody's,
no one knows how exactly to approach this.
And we.
Right.
We can
Yeah.
take that change that you just talked about, and like we do all of our changes for the zoning ordinance, we'll send them to town council, and if they tell us that
Yeah.
we should not do that, then we won't.
We'll talk about it
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
We'll talk about it again. I mean, you're
And-
just
Yeah.
drafting some ideas right now.
Right, and then we'll have the public hearing in which we can explain that we're doing it because of the state
Right.
changes and regulations. Period,
As they exist now.
Correct,
yeah,
but this idea of religious purposes could be anything.
Well, that's the problem.
okay. Well, should we take a vote on if we want to proceed with this?
Yes,
Do we have a choice?
Um,
Well, yeah, we have a choice. We don't-
Yeah, I can, if you
Leave it
want,
or
I can
not.
make a motion to proceed with modifying 3B
3B,
of the use table. With regard to languages we have about churches and changing it to make it compliant with HB 1021.
and removing our definition.
And removing and also making it compliant, right, and removing our definition of church.
okay.
And if
Second the
HB
motion.
21 gets modified,
Well, all laws
get modified. all
are
the time.
modified, we modify along with it.
Okay. I can go along with
I
that.
think we need a second.
I
I
second
You
that.
seconded it, all right, so let's do, roll call.
Rich, I.
Mike, I,
Wendy, no.
John, I
Alan,
want to know why Wendy doesn't want to do it,
Let's finish.
I-
because I respect
We're
you so much.
we're doing a vote.
Okay, Bill, aye.
Morgan?
Aye.
Can we go
I
back?
just feel like we should wait. It's not that I'm against doing it. That's why I just feel like we should wait, but it's fine. I just voted that way knowing I'd be outvoted. and it's fine.
Well, no, I
I'll
mean, I
remember
understand
that.
what you're saying, but. We know we're gonna probably have to change this again. Is
Maybe.
what you're saying.
Well, But that's.
But that's
further
okay.
discussion in
Because
That's
October.
okay.
It's just, yeah,
No, I understand.
No, this is a mess. And it's
Yeah.
gonna take over and over and
Like-
over to fix it.
Like
Yeah.
political signs, thank you.
and
Yes.
and I just tend to.
Thank you, legislature.
Anyway,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
What are these people?
So, Ron,
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we've gone through,
You
so there
retired.
wasn't anything else.
That'll
Tar-
be the day.
There wasn't anything else that we should look at quickly.
Busier now than I was then.
There wasn't
Well, I mean,
anything,
if you're gonna do that update, you should also look at the ZBA section and see if you add language about the timing in there that needs to be changed,
Oh, you're talking about going to 1661?
right?
Right, is the other House bill that was
Just,
passed.
I mean, if you're gonna do updates for that anyway,
yeah,
Don't understand.
and the
What do
first,
we have to do?
the first thing is talk
Changes
about,
in the zoning
so,
Oh,
Bill, the
built into this legislature that targeted specifically the ZBA. Okay, I understand.
there was a long list of changes to the planning and zoning statutes, and a couple of them affect the ZBA timing. So if you talked in detail about the timing in your zoning ordinance, it would need to be changed too, and my take on that is don't replace it with the new language, but just just cite the RSA instead, so that next time it changes, you're already good.
they would change it in the same RSA, they wouldn't create something else.
Correct.
So we would cite
It's
1661.
1661.
No, you don't-
HB.
No, that's the bill that contained all these different
So
things.
it needs to, whatever the applicable
RSA
RSA
will
is.
be,
Yeah,
Right.
we can look at that.
okay. Cause that's something, if we're gonna do a public hearing for everything, we should make sure that's in the public hearing as well. RSA blank, that will change,
Which RSA was changed
change.
because of HB 1661.
CBA.
So is staff gonna do the zoning amendments, or did you want me to?
Can you
We'll-
guys
we'll
do that?
draft.
Okay, staff will do that, yeah,
And we'll send it to you, Tara, to look at, make sure.
okay,
That works
So-
for me. I'm wicked busy right now, so.
I can imagine. So we have the ZBA timing and the church language are the only two
Right.
things that we're gonna jump right on for now. For this,
Yeah, that's the only things in any of this that affect the zoning.
Out of these two.
Right.
out of the,
And
sorry,
then
out
the-
of,
then
yes,
the political side.
yes,
So the
So we
previous,
would have three change,
yes.
right,
three amendment.
Well, and this note,
Areas.
and this note's
Yeah.
notes. Don't
And
move
the
this
snow
notes,
problem,
so
four.
four,
So we have four major areas for amendments. There may be more
Yeah.
questions, but we have four areas that we're looking.
to further.
right, because
Explore
the
timing.
subdivision and site plan, we don't have to.
No, we don't have to.
Yes. Okay. That's as clear as mud, good. Everyone's good up to speed of what we're doing here. Just a lot of zigging and zagging, okay. Cool. Yeah, ish, yeah, just, yeah. it seems to-
We'll find.
Okay, good, now there's a lot of different things.
It
in
would be
there.
written into the minutes. That's clear as mud.
Minute,
Yeah.
see video,
See video.
Yeah,
see video for clarification.
okay. Well, thank you for putting the article right. through.
That was my pleasure to hijack this for
No,
half
it's good.
hour.
No, it's really, it is
Right.
really important.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Committee reports. Town core group is meeting next Tuesday. Haven't really done a whole lot, except we're still talking about fixing those signs that point people in the wrong direction for a couple of things. And the road work. We're still continuing talks on how to best delineate the multi-use pathway from the vehicular traffic. Whether, Margaret brought examples of small armadillos, little,
Jim will attend the next meeting.
and well, yes,
To
but we
discuss
are,
the little armadillos.
they're,
Will
they're,
be no little-
they're little, well, some sort of indicators to help make those using the multi-use pathway feel protected from vehicular traffic is what we're
Right.
discussing
I see.
currently. Primarily, Alan.
I know the horse has left the barn, but can you explain to me why we can't do curbing? I've asked before,
The
but
whole design is based on a flat roadway.
okay, but
design,
we could redesign.
Oh, God.
Well,
Not at this point.
No, the answer to your question is plowing.
Well,
Which I don't
no,
accept
It's only
there's-
part.
No. So we are, the road profile. The way that it is designed, the way that we have bid it. And we already have a contractor under contract to do the work. That whole road profile, the way that the road is round and everything else, we would have to basically throw all those plans away. Tell the contractor that we're not paving and do an entire redesign of the road. That would be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We decided, I think, not to say, Alan, we decided a long
Yeah.
time ago that we actually wanted to get rid of
Curbing.
We're
Curbing.
getting rid of curbing.
It's,
We're not.
it's a double-edged sword safety wise,
Yeah.
because a lot of, a lot of people struggle with, the ADA compliance, but also, people fall off the curb. I don't mean to laugh about that. There have been injuries, people are falling off the curb or like little kids, with their trikes, they're up on the sidewalk and all of a sudden they're sideways on the road. So there's that kind of aspect to it.
Wasn't
too.
that in the pedestrian, I mean, wasn't the
It-
curbing
yes.
And the
pedestrian study,
recommendations in the pedestrian
group,
study were to
yes.
remove curb.
curbing, that's what,
That was about $80,000, had that survey done. Well,
That
about
study.
80,
Study.
90,
90,
Study that,
yeah.
yeah.
a
So
lot.
we
And
concur
that's
with
what was
that.
recommended from other towns, ski towns.
I mean, so somebody has studied this and said it's safer to have a flat surface with some sort of delineation.
Yeah.
Amazingly.
And we've been moving in that direction since 2015,
15.
I think, yeah.
And
Yeah.
are we gonna use, the crowning on the road, I guess it's I'm not sure, Valley Road that goes by the sports center and whatnot?
Mhm.
I mean, somebody's gotta do a better job than those guys did.
We will, yes, we'll do a redesign. We're gonna make everything fit this road profile that we're using. The next road that we're looking at will be Boulder Path Road and Snows Mountain Road. So again, we're gonna carry through this same design concept on those roads.
Okay, what I'm saying is if you look at the rain the other day.
Yeah.
It misses the sewer
Yes,
by whatever.
and there are a lot of reasons for that, but yes, the whole design of the road addresses drainage as well.
It's gonna take us years to get to all the roads.
That's a code issue now anyway, isn't it?
But
A code issue?
now towns can adopt whatever road.
Don't roads have to be designed?
No,
With
there's
the
a
crown
state
to it?
standard, there's a state standard to do that,
Yeah,
but it
okay.
is not a law.
Okay,
It's a best management practice. It's,
understood.
the way that you are supposed to do it.
Can you point me toward the study that said it's
The
safer?
SE group, it's still
It's
online,
on-
right?
It is
Online, I think.
Yeah,
Online on that?
On our
Website.
town
on
website.
the town website,
Yeah,
the SE group.
pedestrian
Pedestrian
innovation study.
It may be in the find it fast.
It may be in Find It Fast, or if you go under the planning board tab, I think it's there.
Okay. If not, I'll find out.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything Conservation Commission?
Yeah, so, Mark, quick question, did Rick Vanderpool touch base with you yet? Okay, we're waiting on Rick Vanderpool to touch base with Mark. To go forward with some of the mitigation stuff, and that hasn't happened yet. Also,
And really, that's not a town, that's between Rick, right now, it's between Rick and the Forest Service.
yep,
So all of the work that Rick is gonna do, well, 99% of what he's gonna do is gonna be on national forest land.
Yep,
So there's very little impact on the town.
For the record, this is for the
Remediation.
remediation for
This is sediment.
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 Okay.
So if there's a cost involved in doing that. It
Well,
has,
we're paying for it,
we're paying for it,
but
but
it's
the-
on town, it's
it's on Forest Service land, which means the Forest Service would have to approve it even
That's
though we're not paying
So
for it.
he's working with.
Okay,
Forest
no, that's fine.
Service.
So this may not be a short, well. may
Well,
not-
no,
may not
he's,
be a-
he already has their approval. He needs to get them the final design and work that out, and that's what he's working.
And he's pretty busy like Tara, he's pretty out straight, but sure.
But it's coming along, okay.
Also, one other thing is trash. HB 1454 has been a bit of a hot topic. So the House and the Senate passed HB 1454, but it was vetoed by our governor.
Right,
So we're not really happy with that as a committee. We're not really happy with that. So we're trying to pursue this a little bit further and see what's going on, but I guess there's an override meeting going on or coming up in Concord at the State House to try and override that.
Well, it's to override any veto bill. It's called override day.
Yeah,
And they will be meeting, I believe it's the 12th or 13th, one of those days.
Yeah.
The legislature comes back into session to take up the vetoes. So the Conservation Commission has prepared a letter to send to our legislative delegation, state legislative delegation. Asking for their support of the veto override.
what is that legislation say?
It has to do with setbacks from wetlands with the
Right.
siting of new.
Yeah, okay,
right now it's
landfill.
250 feet
Right.
from any water.
Yeah.
Area, and it just doesn't make sense to me, but
Well, it's a blanket number rather than a case by case.
Yeah.
basis. So,
Right.
yeah, okay.
Great. Glad you guys are on top of that. Okay.
I think that's about it on conservation.
Fantastic. Thank you. So calendar review. Tuesday, the 20th, 6 o'clock. Adjacent to the post office for our master plan listening session. Our next regular meeting, Thursday, October 13th, back in here. 8 o'clock. I know.
Why, why is the meeting for the 20th? By the post office?
Size.
Size.
Public
Put all the
attendance.
people in here.
Okay,
And that is why we're doing the YouTube. So just to clarify for
sure,
anyone listening into this meeting or whatever, that it,
Why are
The
we
meeting
doing
on the
YouTube
twen-
instead of Zoom?
it
the
will-
meeting on the 20th will not be zoomed. It
Right.
will have the YouTube recording simply because of there's no way I felt, as we discussed last meeting, that we'd be able to wrangle everyone who had called in via Zoom. So we're encouraging folks to email in ahead of time or
Okay.
even after time, we have, we're not gonna,
Taking public
yeah,
comments.
exactly. So it seemed overwhelming to potentially have 50 people in on Zoom and 30 people in a room and give everyone a fair
Sounds like fun.
time.
But Zoom, I'm sorry, YouTube's also live.
It is live.
Yeah.
Folks can write in things, I suppose, type in if they are so inclined,
It's a
but
little
it's,
problematic on YouTube
yeah,
with the chat function.
Right.
right.
So we will take comments and if we don't get them to you during the meeting, we will get them to you after.
Can they call in?
No, no. I mean, this,
So
it shouldn't be seen as like a hit or miss, like you're either contributing that night or you're not. We have like a month, at least month-long process here where people
Yeah,
can
it's
contribute.
up.
We're not, it's not
It's-
one night.
on the
It's-
town website.
Yeah.
They could,
we
they can do like Ray did, just
Yeah,
give people instructions about how to send us email comments. We've had people do that.
Yep.
We.
yeah.
already.
And
Can-
again, for those listening now or, to the
Can we see
recording,
those
we would,
comments prior to?
Yes,
Yeah,
You will get them to us prior to?
yes.
it's because we have to
Like
discuss them.
laundry and.
well, Yeah, but also, I mean,
No.
it's sort of a listening, it's a thing. Yeah,
What's that?
The air freshener.
the air freshener, it keeps making noise.
Clean linen is not my favorite.
Smells the,
It's.
Yeah, it
it's-
smells like laundry.
I
Yeah,
provide.
It's better than dead rat,
Yeah.
okay, so
Oh, I see.
we're dealing with stuff here, with this.
Okay, so
Moving
anyway,
on.
yes, for the 20th. For everyone here and anyone listening, we're not trying to
Yeah.
say either participate the 20th or don't participate. We're encouraging everyone to participate however they can by email before or after. We're not rushing to put this to print on the 21st. We do have.
Do they have a
time.
cutoff date when they can
Uh,
ask questions?
has there been a cutoff date posted, Mark?
I think we put it in the notice, I can't remember.
We-
exactly what it said.
We put it, I believe, for the Friday before the hearing.
Okay.
Or something.
But if
Yeah,
someone-
Friday
was it-
before the hearing, so
It's in
that's,
the notice. I think.
Yeah.
that's like the 17th.
But if someone urgently has something they need to get to us, we will be reviewing everything in our regular October meeting.
Right.
So, we won't be reaching any hot decisions that night of the 20th. We need to take times to mull things over. And so our October meeting, unless
Well,
anyone
We
disagrees.
vote on it.
Our plan
Sorry.
would be to print out all the comments.
Yeah,
Provide you guys with copies,
Mhm.
just like you're gonna be hearing whatever people say to you
right,
that night. And then we weren't planning on any final decision until an agenda item for October.
right,
So-
exactly. Yes. Yep. Okay, So that's clear. okay. Anything else for the group?
Just one quick thing, Madam Chair, it may have escaped everybody's notice, but Waterville Valley has been redistricted out of the state legislature district that we were in, which included Lincoln and Woodstock. And redistricted to a new district with Thornton and
Also,
Ellsworth. Yeah, so,
So, wait a minute, so it's Thornton and Ellsworth
and Waterville
And
Valley.
Waterville Valley.
There'll be a representative, one representative in the State House representing.
And Ellsworth has 20 odd people.
That's right.
All right,
Oh, no, they're like at 87.
no,
now.
They're growing.
really?
it's all based
I
on
grew up there.
population.
That's right. They have to divide
They divided
this,
the districts differently, but to Rich's point,
right,
it gives us a different focus for our representative.
Right.
So now our representative has 3 new towns together.
right.
Um,
And so you'll see new
It's
names
a lot different, and you're gonna
Right.
see new names on the ballot.
on the ballot.
It's just,
Yeah.
we just been talking about a lot of different
Yeah.
legislation and how it impacts
Exactly.
towns. It's important to know who your representative, number one, where they're gonna come from, and number two, who they're representing.
And this will be on the ballot in September.
Well, the primary,
No,
both,
it's,
both the Democrat and there's, I think both Democrat and Republican ballots have one candidate each, so I think,
So it's irrelevant.
well, no, people can write in and then,
You- Right,
no, but
So-
it's
but it's just important to know. who-
to know going forward.
I'm gonna
That's
put
all.
a, I'm gonna
District,
put a
right.
political
Right.
sign up that says, write in Rich.
Too late.
okay,
Can't do that now.
on that note,
So let's adjourn.
If you don't have anything-
If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve.
Madam Chair.
LBJ.
Madam Chair,
just spent,
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
we have a second,
Second,
all those in favor,
Rich, I.
My God.
Wendy, I,
John, I.
Alan, I.
Bill, I.
Morgan, I.
awesome, thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy your morning.
I mean, we've been
Oh.
subjected to
20
gerrymandering.
more minutes.
Enjoy your-
No, I wouldn't say we were gerrymandered. I mean,